Hi, my name is Pete Weichlein. I'm the CEO of FMC, the Former Members of Congress Association, and we really appreciate you all joining us today for this video cast that we're producing in partnership with the Fulcrum. We aim to post these video casts at least once a month, so hopefully if you like what you're seeing, you'll check back in with us every couple of weeks for our new and updated product. Every month, we'll engage a Democrat and a Republican, two former members of Congress, to have a conversation about the issues of the day, the topic of the day, and we will have a conversation that you'll find different from what you'll see on cable news, because no one here will scream at each other. There'll be hopefully very little yelling, and when people do disagree with each other, which is inevitable, it will be done in a respectful and productive way. And I know that my two guests today, former member of Congress Donna Edwards, a Democrat from Maryland, and former member of Congress Charles Boustany, a Republican from Louisiana, will very easily live up to the standard I just set. Today we're going to talk about public service. It's a calling that at the Former Members of Congress Association we hold very dear, and we're quite concerned about what we're seeing, especially over the past couple of years, when it comes to elected officials, when it comes to volunteers, when it comes to members of the PTA, even our first responders. There seems to be a common theme these days that really discourages public service rather than encourages it. When we look back at JFK, who talked about the dignity of public service, these days the narrative is different. I just read a great book about George H.W. Bush, who talked about public service and the importance of encouraging young people to see the positive difference they can make for their communities and for the country and for the world. And I'm just so worried that we're giving every reason imaginable to consider staying as far away as possible from Washington or from public service. There are members of the PTA who are being screamed at, teachers are being assaulted over mass. First responders are paid so little they can't even live in the same zip code of where they're performing their service. And of course, members of Congress, as you can attest to, often have very difficult interactions with people who voted for them and didn't vote for them. So Donna, if I may go to you first, with all that in the background, how do we get back to encouraging this notion that public service is a noble calling that ought to be pursued?
Well, first of all, to the Former Members of Congress Association and to the Fulcrum, thanks so much for having us. I believe in public service, and I think that one of the things that has happened is that over the last actually several decades, it's not recent, that there have been so many attacks on Congress, on public service in general, and on government, saying that government can't do anything, it can't fix anything, it can't help people. And I think that idea has become so ingrained that it has actually affected the ability to recruit and develop people who are willing to go into public service. I know that for me, I grew up in public service. My father was in the military. My mother was an all-star volunteer for thrift shops and the Red Cross and the local food pantry. And then she made a career as a civil servant in the Department of Defense. And so I believe in the value of public service. And I think that, and I learned about it. I learned about public service and the value of that when I was in school. I learned about it by learning civics education and the idea that all of us had something positive to contribute to the world, to the society, and just to our local communities. And I think that one of the ways that you do that is by serving. And I know that I worked in nonprofit organizations for the better part of my career before I decided to run for public office. And I view that as service to community as well. So I think there are a lot of ways that we can get back to this idea that you serve something greater than yourself. And public service is definitely something that's greater than yourself and doesn't always have the financial reward, but definitely has the personal reward. Charles, I don't know. I mean, what happened, as you were growing up that led you to this idea that you wanted to serve?
Yeah, Donna, I agree with you. My grandfather was an immigrant from Lebanon, of all places, and he came to this country with nothing, and ultimately was successful in raising a family, getting into business and banking. And he often told me, and I respected him immensely. He often told me, educate yourself, read a lot, try to learn as much as you can, and give something back to your community. And that always stuck with me. And I went into medicine, which was my way initially in my professional life of giving back, taking care of patients, ultimately as a heart surgeon. And I did a lot of surgery without charging patients who couldn't pay. And oftentimes I even got the hospital to waive bills for people who were having difficulty. I just felt that my calling in medicine was to serve people, to take care of them, provide the best possible health care. And two things prompted me to go into to put my name out there to run for office. One was the plight of so many people with healthcare concerns who had no access and couldn't afford healthcare. That was one. And that was also prompted by the fact that both of my children had life-threatening conditions right a few years before I ran for office, that I thought, my God, if I am struggling to navigate the healthcare system, what do people do who don't have the means or the knowledge of how to navigate our complex healthcare system? So that was one reason. And the other was after 9/11, it focused my attention on doing something even more than what I was doing in medicine, and that I wanted to really give something back to this wonderful country and to serve in some capacity during a difficult time. And this became especially acute after two young men who were killed in combat, who had gone to high school with my son. Thinking about them and their families really prompted me to step outside of my comfort zone to run for public office. And Donna, I agree with you. Public service is a noble calling. John F. Kennedy was an inspiration to me. I read many biographies of Kennedy, and the way he embraced public service and made it something noble, something generous to do, was a real inspiration to me when I was growing up. And Pete, you referenced George H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush had a profound influence on me as I became a young adult and watched how he conducted himself with civility. He had a humility about himself, but yet this was a man who was so accomplished, had served in multiple capacities in the US government, always successful. His service as president and what he did in dealing with the fall of the wall, the Berlin Wall, how he managed very treacherous time with the fall of the Soviet Union and did it successfully, was a true inspiration to me. But the way he did it was impressive. He was always so respectful of whether he was dealing with people who were friendly to him or disrespectful. He brought that civility to politics, and that's missing today. And I'm afraid that it's going to deter a lot of really good people from running for office.
Well, Charles, you remind me that, I think one of the reasons that there has been such an attack on public service is because of what we see on television, frankly, and through social media, that the media landscape has changed so tremendously over the decades of my existence that, it means that people are able to cast themselves anonymously in attack. And so there's no personal to that. It's very different than if you were in front of somebody and confronting them around an issue. And instead, you can hide behind a screen name and level those kind of attacks against our public servants, against, teachers and firefighters and medical professionals and elected officials. And I think that has exposed a real vulnerability in our democracy when our institutions can be attacked like that. And so that worries me. I don't think I think it is recoverable, I should say, that in the positive, but I don't think it's going to be easy to recover the kind of civility you described. And you remind me that my father gave me his tattered Profiles in Courage book by John F. Kennedy when I was growing up, and I still have it, and I read it occasionally, and I flip through it, the pages, and read the stories. And I think it was a reminder to me that you don't have to be some fancy schmuck with a title and a name to be able to serve honorably and serve your community and to serve something greater than yourself.
Well, you're so right. I also have a copy that I run through. It wasn't given to me by my grandfather, but I have read it off and on for a number of years. And it isn't, those stories in there, real life stories, are really, they inspire you to do the right thing. And it's always, it's always hard to do the right thing. It's always easy to take the simple road and go with the flow. And if things are going to change, it's going to require people who are willing to make hard decisions and show courage in politics. And what you were talking about earlier about the anonymity that comes out of all of technology, whether it's social media and then the media that actually their reputations are not on the line, but they are willing to attack our institutions and those who try to serve. All of this is eroding the trust in our unbelievably successful system of democracy in this country, but it's at a dangerous level today. And when you look at those who had profiles in courage, who put themselves out there on the line to do the right thing, on the other hand, you have those who hide behind anonymity and show pure cowardice, yet they're willing to attack our system of government. They're willing to attack people who are trying to serve and do the very best that they can. They attack people who are trying to compromise to find ways to solve problems that every American cares about, even though they may have different views, trying to find a way to get to some consensus. And that is so wrong. And I agree, I'm an optimist like you, Donna. I think it can change. I think our youth, our those coming up, this next generation, will be the ones that will make that change. But I think we're going to go through some tough times for the next few years while the young start to assume leadership positions.
And you both mentioned the incredible impact social media has. I read somewhere that for the current Congress, the 117th Congress, this is the Congress with the largest number of current members who have 1 million+ followers on Twitter. So this is, a beast that keeps them being fed. And I think exactly what both of you highlighted, the way you get 1 million+ followers is because you're out there, you're confrontational, you stir the pot, and you demonstrate to everyone how broken the system is and that you're the only one who has a solution. And I don't know how we can be the counterbalance to that. How can we, and now I think of former members of Congress as a group, us as an organization, but in general, those of us who care so deeply about this, how can we craft a message that competes with that? What's the way to reach these young people who we all know are passionate about the issues? There's no difference between this generation and the one that came before it when it comes to passion, when it comes to concern, when it comes to wanting to make a difference. They're just as engaged nowadays as they were the previous generation. So what kind of resources and tool set can we give them to stop looking at DC as this broken, cynical place that you wouldn't want anything to do with?
Well, so first of all, I think that we also have to do a reality check. That all of those millions of followers that various members of Congress have, turns out that we're a nation of 350 million people. And so the majority of us actually are not on Twitter and Instagram, and a lot of us are on Facebook, but it's not a majority. And I think that it's important to remember that when we talk about how it is that we need to begin to reach the masses, because we have to think about the audience that we really need to target. And that's why I think schools are such an important place. I mean, it is where you form yourself as a human being outside of your parents and your parental unit. And in our schools, I mean, I can go to school after school. I know in my former congressional district, civics just isn't taught in school. And that's where I learned about, about our system of government, about the differences between state and local and federal government, about the responsibilities of the president and vice president of the United States and the cabinet. And those things are largely not taught outside of government or politics classes, which means that you have a very tiny minority of students. And it is why when I know, Charles, you probably had this experience as a member of Congress where, you would have people calling your office asking about how to fix a utility bill because they didn't understand the difference between the private sector, the city council or county council, and a member of Congress. And so we've got to get back to some basics, I believe, in our education system in order to really be able to right the ship for the majority.
Yeah, I fully agree. Working in our schools, our Congress to Campus program that we sponsor as FMC, we're a bipartisan pair of members, or maybe a group of members, goes to a college campus or does it virtually and engages with students and really talks about the issues and really focuses on, even though you can have different opinions about how to solve something, you can have a civil discussion about it, and hopefully the best ideas emerge, and there can be a level of compromise to do some of this. But Pete, you made reference to followers on social media and so many members of Congress now who take that as a source of pride because it's sort of a quantitative metric for their performative politics rather than what they were really elected to do, and that is to go and work with colleagues in Congress to legislate, solve problems, write law that creates equity and fair play across the country in all these different areas. So at FMC, all we can do now, we're not in office anymore, we can set an example. And that's what we're trying to do here. That's what we try to do in all the different venues where we work. But also, we have a tremendous cumulative experience as members of Congress who've served a number of years. We have institutional memory about what works and what doesn't work as an institution with Congress. And hopefully we can impart some of that to willing members who are currently serving. I also get some statistics just recently. Half of the 212 Republicans in the House took office after Trump was elected in 2016. And 75 of those members took office sometime after Paul Ryan left the speakership. You look at that and you realize just on the Republican side alone, there's so little inexperience. And so they're all trying to find ways to garner attention. And they don't really know, they don't have a whole lot of mentors there to work with to teach them. This is the tradition of Congress. This is how it works. This is how you can get things done. So we can play a role in that.
Yeah. Yeah, and those millions of followers, of course, are an instant source of fundraising, which is a great topic for a future video cast, I think. Yeah. But let me thank you both. The purpose of this is to give some food for thought to our viewers, and you both certainly did that. The other purpose is what Charles just referenced, which is to showcase there are current and former members, both sides of the aisle, the vast majority, who are interested in a dialogue and are interested in learning from each other and working with each other. And that's really what makes Congress succeed at the highest level, when that's the mindset. So thank you for showcasing that. Really appreciate it. And we'll be sure to invite you back for future FMC videocasts. Thank you both so much.
Thanks.